I Testify is about testifying of what Jesus Christ has done and can do in each of our lives. Through testimony of people just like you, and through study of His Word, our prayer is to encourage each follower of Christ to be a light in this world. So let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father, which is in heaven. Matthew 5:16.
Sometimes the road is lonely, sometimes it's hard to do. When you feel you're the only, oh listen up, I wrote this song for you. You know your road's been trodden, and someone's walked in your shoes. When you feel like it's over, oh no, it's just the start of chapter 2. So keep on knocking, love, keep on walking, even when it's hard to do. And don't you know, dear, you'll make it home here, 'cause love, it won't give up on you. Yeah. Yeah, na 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 na. Yeah, no, it won't give up on you. No, it won't give up on you. Sometimes the world is heavy, sometimes it breaks you down. When your knees ain't steady, you'll find your strength when they hit the ground. So keep on knocking, love, keep on walking, even when it's hard to do. And don't you know, dear, you'll make it home here, 'cause love, it won't give up. No, it won't give up. Said love, it won't give up on you. Yeah. Yeah. Na 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 na. Yeah. No, it won't give up on you. No, it won't give up on you. So keep on knocking, love, keep on walking, even when it's hard to do. And don't you know, dear, you'll make it home here, 'cause love, it won't give up. No, it won't give up. So don't you give up on you. Yeah. Yeah. Na 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 na. Yeah. No, it won't give up on you. No, it won't give up on you. No, it won't give up on you.
Oh, amen. Thank you so much. That was actually the song that I was hoping that Tad was going to play. I was actually humming it this morning. So everyone, welcome to another episode of I Testify. We're so happy that you could join us today with our special guest, Tad Worku. Thank you so much. We're so happy that you could finally make it on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And we're so happy that you were able to come and share your music as well. So, Tad is an ER trauma nurse as well as a professional singer-songwriter, and so he's working a lot harder than I am, for sure. So what came first, the interest in healthcare or the interest in music?
Definitely music. So music, I think, was my earliest passion and the thing I chose as the thing I wanted to do professionally, as the thing I wanted to do to quote unquote make it. And initially when things started, healthcare wasn't even in my thought process. I don't think it was something that I set out to do.
Well, before you got into healthcare, how did you realize that you were even musically talented? Like, you play guitar, you play piano, and probably other musical instruments we don't even know about.
Yeah.
That you haven't even learned yet, you could probably learn, but...
Yeah, so I think I enjoyed listening to music, like probably like anybody else growing up. And I took piano lessons. That was the first thing. And I remember my piano teacher tried to get me to play, to read music, and I would play by ear. So I would always ask her to play the song before I started, and one time she was like, "Hey, you're missing a note," and I didn't know what note it was, and so she'd be like, "I'm gonna stop playing the songs before you do it," and I was like, "This isn't gonna work." So I enjoyed playing by ear, or like the creative side of music more than reading music. But I think the first time it started to where I was like, oh, maybe I can do this, or you recognize that you have some type of talent in it, was in high school. Yeah.
So how'd you pick up guitar then?
Guitar was much later, and I picked it up kind of practically because as a songwriter, you write different songs on piano than you would on guitar. So I wanted to unlock access to writing different songs. And so I found that guitar allowed me to write different songs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's why I picked it up. And I picked it up years after piano.
So what happened during high school when you finally realized this is what
Yeah, no,
you were gonna do?
I sang a solo it was the first Noel, I remember it. I think it was sophomore, junior year. And I sang that solo, and something just clicked. Like, I was like, oh, that... And someone had asked me to sing it, so I sang that song.
Did they know you could sing? I'm assuming they did.
I think I sang in choir,
Uh-oh.
and I would do like some of the solos and stuff, but...
Because you have a unique voice. It's very...
I think that's come with time. Like, really, I think finding your voice in music is like finding your identity, right? So I think initially when you start out in music, you try to sound like somebody, and that was me as well. But yeah, someone asked me to sing that song, and I sang it, and then afterwards it was just like something clicked, and I started singing more. Like that's what I would trace it back to.
Oh.
So
actually, quite from an early age, you thought, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
after I didn't think that until after graduating from high school. When I graduated from high school, I was like, I'm going to do this. That's when it kind of clicked that I would probably try to do it.
So did you go to college at the same time that you were starting to pursue music professionally?
I had the idea, but I had a lot to learn. But I think that's when it kind of clicked as an idea, more of an idea. But still like a lot of growth, but I started putting time into the development of it.
When you initially went into music, the songs you're singing now, the transition we'll get to.
Yeah.
When you initially went into music, it wasn't ministry oriented. So your focus was more on getting big and becoming famous?
For sure.
Okay. So yeah, what did you aspire to be, and what was leading you, and how did you wrestle with that faith, or was it even a wrestle at all?
Yeah, good question. I did not wrestle with the faith at that point. I was like, I want to be famous. I chose pop music. I was like, I want to do pop music. I want to get as big as I can. And people would like, I don't think Christian music was in my thought pattern at that point. It was kind of, I guess, what I was listening to, what I aspired to be, and I think I wanted something that was in my head at that point relevant to like the masses, and I saw that more as like pop music than the Christian music that I'd kind of listened to passively or been exposed to. I think for me, in my head at that point, the idea was I want something that I can go to the masses with.
So just to clarify, Ted, you grew up as...
Absolutely. Christian.
Absolutely
Yeah.
Christian.
Yeah.
Okay.
Christian
Yeah.
schools, Christian parents, and an amazing home. Like I had an amazing childhood. I was surrounded by it. But I don't think, and I'd say maybe for other people in the same situation, I didn't internalize that.
Yeah.
as my own personal relationship with God until after college. Yeah.
So were you beginning to write secular songs
Oh, yeah.
as well during that time?
Yeah, that's pretty much all I wrote was like that kind, like love songs or pop songs is what I started writing.
So how did this get to become a reality then?
Yeah, so when I graduated from college, I moved to San Francisco and I'd studied business. So I graduated with a degree in business and I moved there, and I had gotten into an artist development deal for pop music. And it was a pretty well-known studio in San Francisco. And so the guy that was on the real estate side of the building had listened to the music and liked it. And so I was like, hey, can I meet this guy? So I ended up meeting him. He was a real estate development and business entrepreneur and had started a lot of successful companies in the Bay Area. So I ended up moving there with him as my mentor in an artist development deal, and that's kind of what afforded me to get in to start doing music after I graduated. And so then I just started hustling with music. I started doing open mics. I started doing performing anywhere I could. And the opportunities just slowly started to increase. And then there was this really well-known venue in the Bay Area, San Francisco. And I got an opportunity to headline there. And we sold out the show. And that was kind of the beginning of, that's when something clicked where it was like, maybe I can do something with this. So that was kind of the point for me.
So as this is developing, what are your parents thinking?
Yeah, that's
or your siblings, or yeah.
I think my mom is this prayer warrior mom. So my mom was praying the whole time that whatever would work out would work out. Probably not the music side that I was doing, but they were still super supportive. And I think what happened was, because I had the business side of things that I was doing, it was still, things were still being taken care of. So my dad had been there at the first studio session I went to, and he had kind of followed the story. And I think initially, like any parent, he was like, is this realistic? And then as it started to grow, I think he also started to see okay, there's stuff happening. So he was always kind of, they were both supportive, but supportive of as long as it made sense. So kind of what's your contingency planning, and then does it make sense, was kind of, I think, the thought process from my parents' side. But definitely supportive. I think my mom would just kind of pray through the...
Pray,
yeah, for sure.
So was there any kind of dissonance or any kind of concerns that maybe your life was going to take you in a direction other than what they had intended for? I mean, putting you through academies, and I mean, you can see the direction that they wanted you to be grounded, and this could deter that. So was that a concern for them? I almost want to have your parents on the show. How did you...
Yeah, that would be... They have a lot of wisdom, right?
Yeah.
And I think their story kind of ties into mine. They were both born in rural Ethiopia as farmers and shepherds, and came to through faith and through people serving, got an education, came to the States, my dad got 3 masters and an honorary doctorate, and so their story has kind of been woven through faith. And I don't think they never would try to tell us what to do. We had room to forge our own path, but they were definitely, the way they encouraged faith, I think was important, because I think if they would have pushed it different, you could just walk away from it. And so I think the way they pushed it was always it was always encouraging. And my mom, there were times where my mom would have an opportunity to just say something, and she would just be like, God will lead you to that decision, and she'd pray. And I think for me, looking back on that helped me develop my faith wasn't linked to
her opinion of...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
That's
which
really
is
good.
a lot stronger when you come to the conclusion. So I think I came to my own conclusions, and I could have made whatever decision I wanted. Whatever they wanted was influential, but I could come to whatever decision I wanted, and I still felt supported by them. Even if I did pop music full time, I still had their support.
That's
Yeah,
tough.
and prayer is oftentimes speaks louder,
Yeah.
yeah, than anything that we could say, of course. So it's an interesting concept. She was supportive, but she prayed.
Yeah, and I think it's
Tough.
an interesting road, because the logical side would say just steer them.
Right.
But you can't, I don't think, like you can steer them. Like I think some of the things that helped me make decisions that I ended up making were how I was raised. Were having, when I wasn't around Christian friends, when I was around different environments, those were the things that told me what's a good environment, what's not a good environment. So it was all in my head, but I had to make some of those decisions, and I had to come to some of those conclusions. And I think knowing that I had 100% support, knowing that they were praying for me, knowing that I had this like faith and moral compass had been instilled in me, when it came down to significant decisions, like I was using all of those things to make the decisions. And I credit prayer, like their prayer, for a lot of the decisions, but it was a more powerful way for me to make the decision than not having to think about it and just saying, I'm going to do this because they want me to do it.
So then eventually you were making decisions that led you away from music because you went into nursing, right?
Yeah.
So how did that come about?
Another good question. So for me, as I was doing I got into pop music. I started writing with other production teams, and we started doing shows, and things started to kind of pick up. And that was the first time for me that I had to really think about, like, okay, if this is a reality, where am I going with it? And so there were moments in that I would either have conversations with people, or as things grew, people would come give me the opinions. And I still had an idea that I wanted to do good message pop music and kind of church the unchurched, like go to the stadiums where they're not coming to church, so I'm going there. And I felt at times that I was walking this tightrope I had not defined, and so it was more like the industry or what I was trying to do would just pull you over there, like, you have talent, why don't you just do this? And I'd be like, oh, that's not what I'm trying to do here. And so I kind of started defending my own line that I was comfortable with, and so I was using a lot of energy up, like trying to stay on my like line that I hadn't defined, and I didn't have a story behind, and I would try to keep it from being pulled, and it just continually like would try to pull. And so for me, I lost some peace. So I lost peace in the direction I was going, and there were significant moments that contributed to that, but the direction that things were going, I didn't have peace that the direction that where I would end up would be where I was wanting to end up. And I had this strong sense that I was going somewhere that when I ended up there, I would be like, how did I get here? And I had that from the beginning, like early on. And I think there was a big night for me, which was September 26, 2011, and that was kind of, everything had been done. We finished a pop album, had an award-winning team, and that night I had a big show the next day, and I just had no peace about it. Like I remember like I would have been okay if it got canceled, if I couldn't sing, if I was sick, and I just was tossing and turning, and it wasn't that I wasn't tired.
She's totally conflicting for a performing artist. It's like, this is like your moment. Like, I want to be out there.
Yeah, this is what you've been working towards.
And that's what, like, I really stopped and I was like, okay, what is and I had moments where I was like, that wasn't the first moment, but it was kind of the biggest moment. And so I really wrestled with that one, and I was like, if I don't have peace with where I'm going, what am I doing it for? And it felt like in that moment I could look into where I was going, and I saw myself, and I just asked, like, how did I get here? And it was such a strong response that night that I knew that if I kept going, I would end up there and remember that night.
Wow.
And I was like, I can't get there and know I already knew. And so I decided that night that I was done with music. And it wasn't just like, oh, out of nowhere. I had been spending a lot more time in my relationship with God, and it was giving me something that I hadn't experienced. And so there was that side that was kind of like, there's good stuff here. And so that was in the background. And there were other decisions that I was making that were kind of bringing about that decision. It wasn't just like I woke up one day and it was like, oh, I'm done with music. It was slow, little decisions here, little decisions there, and that's how I ended up there. And I always wondered why that night. But a week after that, I got a phone call that all of my national, international tour funding for that album was approved. So if I wouldn't have made that decision that night and I got the call the next week, I would have called my team, taken the money, and we would have been on tour. Because I made that decision that night, I got the call the next week. I didn't tell anybody, and I started really like praying and wrestling about like what's going on here. And
did anyone else know about the call? Like your manager, your producer?
no, nobody. My parents knew.
Oh wow, they called you directly.
Yeah, because I had applied through. I had applied through something else, so they were going to call me, but our team was so close that once they called me, my team would be the first people to know.
Sure.
But I had decided to quit and then got that call. So I didn't tell anybody, which was interesting in that to me, that explained the timing of things. And so I really wrestled with God, and I had to make that decision, and I had to make that decision on my own. And I knew if I made that decision, if I quit and actually gave it away, once I told my team, a lot of things would end.
So
I would be so scared.
something that oh wow, time's really escaping.
Yes.
Something else that I think is probably important for people listening are those who are in music. They do have the talent. They want to pursue music professionally. What would you tell them to maybe deter them from making the same directional mistakes that you had to come back to and relearn? And
I don't think I could blanket a statement to somebody. I don't think I would like blanket a statement on someone's process or journey, but what I would say is like you trust God's leading over all of the other stuff, and trust his timing, and trust how he'll do it, because he gave you the talent for a reason. And it doesn't have to look like what certain people think it should look like. That, I think, is the opposite side of, there's two temptations, I think, in trusting where God is leading. And one is like, give everything away. The other one is do what somebody wants you to do that has a definition of your talent or of your gift. Like, oh, you could do this with it and it would look good. And I think both are temptations. Both sides can be not what God had in mind, but can be used can be in good, the suggestions can be in good faith but I think both of those things can lead you in a place that is not necessarily where God has you specifically. So I would say learn how to trust God with the gift and be willing to give the gift away.
which is where you're getting to right now.
Yeah. I think you have to. I think for me, initially, my gift, I connected to my value. So I recognized early on that if I could do pop music and do it well, I'd have everything that I wanted. Like everything. I wouldn't need, if I could master that one thing, I could take care of everything that I desired in life. And so I connected music to my value and said, if I can do that and connect it to my value, I'm going to get what I want.
Temporally, you're right, though.
So it was worth it. So what God had to do was disconnect my gift from my value, which was painful, but that was the whole process of walking away from music. Once I quit music, like I had to learn like who I was again. But I didn't lose the gift. So then the gift became a key or a tool, but it wasn't the thing that defined me. And I think that allowed it to be what it was supposed to be in the first place. And it became more powerful, stronger, but I wasn't, like my value wasn't connected to it. So it freed me from having my value connected to like how many tickets I sold, how much success I got. And then opened me up to saying like, I can follow where God is leading in the whole process. And I think that's the important thing. And it doesn't matter. Doesn't have to just be music. It could be your profession, your degree, your title, your status. Anything that becomes your value, I think, becomes a stumbling block for you. So
How is God?
I was going to say, we only have a few minutes, so let's...
I was going to say, how is
Go
God using your talent now?
yeah, so I think after quitting music, it was just like an alternate path. Like stuff stopped making, like, I think I had planned a lot, and things stopped making like linear sense. Like, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. I quit music and went back to school for nursing, which to me was musical, like the death of music. There's no easier way to kill music than be like, okay, I'm going into healthcare. Like, I'm not going to have time, So in my head, it was like, this is a new life for me. So I went into healthcare, and what I found in healthcare for me was it developed my character. Like, as a musician, I was served, and then I went into nursing, and like I was very quickly, you learn how to serve. And so I think it just changed me, and I think that's what the reason I got into that was God changed me through the development process. So going into healthcare was development that I needed for just my character. And then what I realized was, working in ER trauma, the experiences and the patient conversations that I'd have around life and death and all of that stuff ended up shaping me as a songwriter. So it changed the songs I wrote and gave them a depth that I didn't even have in me before I started writing them. So music ended up being, I think, most impacted by the development that I had in healthcare.
So how did you get the return back to music? We have just about a minute.
Yeah, so I think as a songwriter, I never really stopped being a songwriter. It was identity. So being in that new environment of ER trauma inspired songs to come out, and I started writing them. And my whole team that I had given away everybody's money stayed together, and they all came back together and re-recorded like the album that I had written throughout this whole process.
Wow.
And so this Love Is All album, we finished as a result of kind of the decisions I made. So.
Which brings us to what's so significant about today.
Yeah, so 8 years later, when I thought I was finishing my debut album in 2012, 8 years later, on January 24th, 2020, I'm actually releasing Love Is All, my debut album, today.
Today?
Yeah.
Wow, what a significant moment.
Yeah.
And you chose to share it with us.
Yeah, exactly. No better place to share it. So.
All right. Well, we hope that everyone enjoyed this testimony about Tad, and I feel like there's a part 2 that we just really need to get to, but it's just been an amazing testimony to see how God has used the talent and brought it back for him to use it again. And please check out Tad's music. It's on iTunes, right? Yeah, it'll be on iTunes, Spotify, all of Amazon, all of them. Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you for tuning in, and please continue to join us. Keep us in your prayers, and God bless you.